Hello, my name is Colin Whitehead, and today I'll be speaking about Religiosidad Popular and Semiotics in the Evangelization of Hispanic Youth. Before I begin, just a couple of notes about some of the terminology that I'll be using. First, I've chosen to use the term Hispanic instead of Latinx. My reason for this is simply because it mirrors the pastoral practice of the church. If you go to a parish or a diocese that serves Hispanic communities, almost always you'll hear the term Hispanic ministry as opposed to Latinx ministry. Second, I use a few Spanish words in my presentation, and I'd like to point your attention to one of them, the term I just mentioned, Religiosidad Popular. This word is a translation of popular religiosity, and it conveys a sense or an image perhaps of religious devotions and celebrations and rituals. The difference being that the term in Spanish also conveys a sense of cultural heritage that flows out of these devotional practices and then returns to mutually inform them. So with that in mind, let's begin. Religious disaffiliation within the Catholic Church is a crisis of the present moment. Despite a church whose membership is becoming increasingly younger and increasingly Hispanic, the Hispanic community has not gone untouched by this phenomenon. In his book Latino Catholicism, Transformation in America's Largest Church, theologian and historian of American Catholicism Timothy Matavina relates the story of a former student of his who had become disillusioned with the church. After years of witnessing her mother turn to God and religious devotions to deal with the daily hardship of life as a Latina immigrant, she ultimately came to the following conclusion: I can't go to Mass without feeling like I have to suffer. So now I feel that the church, moreover Christianity, has nothing to offer me, even though I know it does and I would like it to. But my experience and identity as a Catholic is wrapped up in suffering. This anecdote illustrates one reason among many that youth cite as obstacles to the faith. Now, while I do not think that these experiences of religious rituals and devotions, henceforth referred to as religiosidad popular, are the determining factor that leads to disaffiliation, I do think that they play a central role in our solution and merit a special attention. There is a power and a beauty unique to them that cannot be replicated in any other mode of evangelization nor expression of the faith. Religiosidad Popular provides a bridge into mystery by concretizing spiritual realities and at the same time passes on history and culture. In other words, so much is bound up in Religiosidad Popular that if we do not incorporate it into our pastoral planning, youth in the church will not only encounter a crisis of faith, but a crisis of identity as well. In order to understand why Religiosidad Popular functions the way that it does in the lives of Hispanics, we must first understand semiotics, the study of how signs and symbols function, for signs and symbols are at the heart of the realities that these devotions actualize. Since Cecilia Gonzalez Andreu, a scholar of theological aesthetics at Loyola Marymount University, describes symbols as bridges to a world of prophetic wonder because they make accessible mysteries that otherwise could not be known. Above all, symbols are the means by which God communicates revelation to us and thereby draws us into an encounter with God's very self. Drawing on the early thought of Avery Cardinal Dulles, Gonzalez Andreu writes of the need to embrace the depth of the power of the revelatory symbol. Dulles believes that we have missed a crucial step in our process of evangelization, namely, that we have attempted to explain to others how to interpret the faith without having first explained to them how it is that the faith is revealed. In other words, we're missing a pre-evangelization of sorts. The missing step is an understanding of the revelatory nature of symbols, which we see reflected in the entirety of the material world around us, and above all through expressions of art. Gonzalez Andreu writes that the first encounter any of us has with art is pre-theological, meaning that its occurrence precedes any theological reflection that might follow. The tears I notice welling up in my eyes as I listen to Mozart's Requiem Mass happen much before I have a chance to reflect on why. Symbols, manifested in the Religiosidad Popular, can act as this necessary pre-evangelization before a first attempt at evangelization is made. Dulles understands a symbol to be an externally perceived sign that works mysteriously on the human consciousness so as to suggest more than it can clearly describe or define. He brilliantly pairs this with the 20th century poet William Butler Yeats' understanding of a symbol as indeed the only possible expression of some invisible essence, a transparent lamp about a spiritual flame. If symbols are indeed the only possible expression of invisible realities, then the semiotic nature of Religiosidad Popular is grounds for retaining it as an indispensable tool within our framework of evangelization. Because the symbols at play in the Religiosidad Popular communicate invisible realities in a singular way, Alex Garcia Rivera, who spent his last years teaching at the Jesuit School of Theology, adds a key insight when he defines these devotions as a site or a series of sites in which faith is challenged, interpreted, and made one's own. Religiosidad Popular and the outward expression that it gives to faith is therefore a necessary step on the road to becoming a disciple. Pope John Paul II recognized this when he spoke of popular devotions in Latin America as an opportunity for the faithful to encounter the living Christ. Suspicion surrounds Religiosidad Popular because of the fact that it wells up from within the people of God and therefore runs the risk of not corresponding to the official dogmatic teaching of the Church. Done poorly, such practices can even communicate a distorted image of God, and in a religious tradition in which the content of personal belief has implications for one's salvation, this is a very real danger. But as Garcia Rivera notes, this is a risk that must be taken because popular religion is a way in which the faith of its members becomes authenticated, and a crucible in which the faith of the Church becomes incarnated. It is a place where the big story, carried by official tradition, is made possible through the little stories of the popular. A further reason for recognizing the place of Religiosidad Popular in evangelizing and expressing one's faith is its connection to the Mass. It disposes us to enter into the sacred mysteries of the Mass, which is Religiosidad Popular par excellence. It also flows from and prolongs the Mass. Drawing on the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops speaks of Religiosidad Popular as a way of living out Paul's exhortation to pray without ceasing. Popular devotions, it says, play a crucial role in helping to foster this ceaseless prayer. Properly used, popular devotional practices do not replace the liturgical life of the Church. Rather, they extend it into daily life. This relationship could be put analogically. Religiosidad Popular is to the Mass what sacramentals are to the sacraments. Religiosidad Popular puts itself at the service of the Mass, working to imitate and expand its saving work into all corners of daily life. As systematician and theologian Peter Castorella has shown in his article, The Painted Word, Religiosidad Popular actualizes spiritual realities such that those involved in the procession of El Señor de los Milagros in Washington, D.C., for example, are at one and the same time walking through the streets of Lima, Peru. Through it, the worshiper becomes a multi-site person. Another reason that Religiosidad Popular acts as an inescapable method of evangelization for Hispanics is because it is the way in which families pass on their history and culture. Theologian Robert Schreiter asserts that there is a natural correlation between signs and culture, what he calls a semiotics of culture, in which signs act as a nonverbal form of cultural communication. Within this is what classical communications theory calls a semiosphere. A semiosphere, Garcia Rivera states, is akin to a biosphere. A biosphere contains within it all the necessary processes and elements for a particular way of life to exist. A semiosphere contains within it all the necessary signs, codes, and messages for a way of life to be expressed. Orlando Espín, one of the founders of the Academy of Catholic Hispanic Theologians of the United States, Actus, suggests that devotions such as the Via Crucis, the Good Friday representation of Christ's Passion, act as an epistemological network that contextualizes suffering, thereby allowing Hispanics to make meaning of such suffering. Furthermore, because these devotions transmit culture and history, they become critical for Hispanics to grow in self-understanding. This insight is especially true for Hispanics who identify as mestizo or mestiza, a term charged with colonial connotations and best seen in Father Virgil Elizondo's work on mestizaje. Because mestizos and mestizas fall between two cultures, that is, Anglo and indigenous, neither group fully accepts them. Elizondo, widely regarded as one of the founders of a distinctly Hispanic way of doing theology, takes this thought a step further, noting that this problem is compounded for US Hispanics who experience a doble mestizaje, in which they are rejected by both American and Mexican cultures. The use of Religiosidad Popular as a mechanism to preserve and live into one's cultural identity then becomes of utmost importance. It draws on a collective chain of memory that connects worshipers to a time, place, and people, spiritually, socially, and culturally. This collective chain of memory echoes the theological concept of dangerous memory put forth by political theologian Johann Baptist Metz and appropriated to the Hispanic context by theologians such as Ada Maria Isasi Diaz, Roberto Goizueta, and Orlando Espín. Because memories keep past events alive, they bring past events to bear on the present. Goizueta adds, they are dangerous precisely because they can never be erased. No amount of future success or liberation can wipe away the wounds, the price paid for that success or liberation. For Hispanics especially, the mystery of Christ's passion, death, and resurrection is the most dangerous memory of all. There's a dramatic realism to it. If what happened 2,000 years ago has implications for salvation, then this event cannot be solely something of the past. It remains ever present, imbued with a living power that reaches into the current moment in history. In addition to passing on culture, history, and a sense of individual and communal identity, Religiosidad Popular offers the faith a mode of enculturation. Enculturation is necessary for believers to have a personal, intimate encounter with God. This is the very principle of the incarnation. The Word became fully human in order to enter into complete solidarity with humanity. And this is also the Guadalupan principle. The revelation of the Virgin Mary as mestiza to Juan Diego and the marvel of her appropriation of the indigenous language of Nahuatl created a personal encounter that became the catalyst for many natives to convert. Ask multilingual speakers which language they prefer to use when they commune with God in prayer, and they will likely state that it is indeed through their native language. Enculturation is the faith's way and God's way of knowing one's audience. This essay has set out to demonstrate that Religiosidad Popular is at the heart of evangelizing Hispanic youth because of its semiotic and aesthetic nature. Any effort to pass on the faith Latinamente, that is, in a distinctly Hispanic way, must incorporate experiences of Religiosidad Popular. Efforts outside of this framework will ultimately fail to help Hispanic youth develop a mature faith and an integrated sense of identity, which reflects the goodness, truth, and beauty of God. Thank you very much.